the next thing we're going to talk about is the same guy we talk about, I think, in every episode. It's impossible to not talk about him.
Yeah.
In an off season where Michigan football is literally a national championship contender and everything we just spoke about, I don't think you or I can go a whole day without anybody asking about Bryce Underwood. Right. So 5-star, number 1 QB in the 2025 class, recently set what we're going to call a tentative commitment date. I don't think anyone would be shocked at this point if the commitment comes sooner than that, but he's talking about in January doing a commitment. There is still a lot of talk, and Josh, you can get into it, about Michigan's barbecue, the barbecue at the Big House, big recruiting event next weekend. We will talk about that on next week's podcast, whether or not he's going to attend. But just kind of in general, I know you posted some intel since the last time we've had a podcast about where things would sit with Underwood in Michigan, and I'm going to let you give a lot more detail. But long story short, things continue to be good for Bryce Underwood in Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking, it's funny just how few short months ago, you and I were sitting here going, we'll see what happens. I'll believe it when I see it.
Right.
And now I'm believing it, and now I'm seeing it. I think
we're looking into people talking about him being a silent, like that's the level of the chatter this has become, right?
Right. And we're not.
You and I, Kirk Campbell.
Yeah, right. And well, you and I aren't saying he's a silent. We'll make that clear. I mean, he's
but like that's the kind of smoke we're talking about.
Yeah, no, there is some chatter out there, but I don't think that's accurate. But no, Josh, don't
tell me he committed to Michigan. Tell me he did.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, yeah, just to clarify, we're not saying that. I'm just saying, yeah, like you said, the scope of things. Like we've gone from hedging to the point where like, hey, I don't know if he's going to stick around home. I think he's going to want to stretch his legs, to now telling people, I don't think he's silent. No.
Yeah, right. What a difference a couple of months make. No, I do think, obviously not a silent, but I do think Michigan is right at the top, if not the leader right now for him. I truly believe that. I've heard confidence from multiple people out, and different. They're different people. It's not an echo chamber. It's different place sources who have confidence that Michigan is in a really, really good spot for Bryce Underwood. And I believe it. I truly do. I think if Michigan continues to do what it's doing and win, obviously, and with Kirk Campbell continuing to do what he's doing in terms of building that relationship with Bryce and his family, I think Michigan can win this one. And, and it's not going to be easy. I mean, we're not talking about them just walking it out and just walking away with it. It's not, it's going to be a battle, but I think if Michigan continues to do what it does, present a good NIL package, in terms of what he can do with it once he arrives on campus. I'm not saying, offering him a bag. I'm just saying like having like that presentation that of what he's capable of doing while at Michigan and showcasing that and just all of the above. I think Michigan can really can land him. And yeah, we'll see if that January 6th commitment date is firm. He kind of said it was a little bit tentative, so it could even come before that or after that. But there's no denying how well Michigan sits right now, and I'm not in the territory of making an official prediction and placing a future cast and all that kind of stuff. I'm not at that level yet, but I do get the sense that Michigan has been told that they're sitting in a really good spot right now. And I'll stress right now, I think, I mean, this will be the Michigan's biggest commit, in a very long time, maybe ever. I think Bryce
getting someone like Rashawn Gary, but at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Very true. Yeah. Very true. I think that would be a huge win. You're talking from one 5-star to another. I mean, to build up that kind of depth and pipeline, it's gigantic. So I'm talking right now, I think Michigan is in a really good position to keep him in the state And, we'll see how things develop. I don't know if he's going to be at the barbecue. I know Michigan has invited him and a couple of his Belleville teammates. Again, I've heard so many things like, oh, I don't know. Well, he might. I mean, we'll find out. I mean, obviously it's in his backyard, so he can show up whenever. But we'll see. We'll see kind of how that works out. And again, if he doesn't come, it's not the end of the world. But
right.
Anytime you can get a guy to visit on campus, the amount of time, especially the amount of times he's been on campus, that would be a pretty big deal. So. Right now, I really, really like where Michigan sits. I would argue they probably are the top school right now. If not right there with, the LSUs, the Alabamas of the world. So, we'll see. We'll see, but it's really hard to not like where Michigan sits right now.
Yeah, and we've talked about 100 times how Kurt Campbell has changed this recruitment, right? Because it felt like he was somebody that was going to want to go to an LSU or a Bama to, get south somewhere else and then somewhere where he can really pad some pass stats, right? So I do think winning is so important. I know everybody that the NIL conversation, I know that's there, but if you don't think winning is like the NIL switch doesn't just go on or off for these programs that see spikes or falls, right? They either win or they lose, right? That's such a big piece of it. Getting back to the playoff 2 years in a row now, that's a big piece of it. And if they do throw the ball a little bit more and let JJ be a little bit more creative, I don't think that's going to hurt when it comes to Bryce Underwood. And I'd expect, I talked about this, I wouldn't be shocked if he's at a lot of games this year. It'd just be so easy for him to drop in. So it's weird. It feels a little bit different than the Jaden Davis recruitment in that we felt like Michigan had a big lead this time last year with Davis. But obviously there was some trepidation, a little bit of holding back, right? Some time they wanted to give it. We found out a lot of that had to deal with Matt Weiss, right?
Yeah.
But Michigan also didn't really have a lot of targets left, right? As the season went on with Moore and Carr. So it kind of had all of its eggs in the Davis basket. So John brought up a good point. And I wanted to talk about this as well in terms of the timeline.
Yep.
Underwood's not the only top quarterback Michigan's in on, right? I do think he's the clear top target, but they're in on a lot of guys, including Ryan Montgomery, who might not be looking at Michigan the same anymore after Ohio State took a commitment from Tavian St. Clair, right? So John asked, how does the positive outlook with Underwood affect the Ryan Montgomery recruitment? He seems really interested, and I believe that he's supposed to attend the barbecue.
Yeah, he is.
Right. So would he be available if Bryce leaves? So I'm assuming if Michigan doesn't get Bryce, can they go to Montgomery? This is where the timeline gets interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if he hasn't committed anywhere, I mean, he's available. I think, again, he has a really strong relationship with Kurt Campbell. Michigan believes he's on the same similar level talent-wise as Bryce Underwood, so they're not feeling like they're settling. I mean, you're talking about a fringe 5-star recruit in Montgomery. I mean, this kid is good. I think obviously Michigan's board is kind of shuffled a little bit. I think Montgomery was higher up on the board than Bryce was, right around when Campbell was hired. And obviously things have shifted massively. So I do think
there's George McIntyre too.
Yeah, there is George McIntyre, but I think I do believe he's interested, but I would not be shocked
stay
if he
south.
Stay south. Yeah. But with Montgomery, this, I hate to say that like he's a backup plan because he's not, but at the same time, Michigan has clearly prioritized Underwood, that they would wait. I would be pretty certain that they would wait for a decision from Underwood first before they would see what Montgomery does. And it kind of depends on what Montgomery does too. I mean, from talking to him and his dad, it just doesn't seem like they're in a rush, which works in Michigan's favor too, because it looks like, at least from, reading tea leaves and kind of, and talking to Bryce as well, that he's looking to wrap this up and he's kind of over the whole process. So that works in Michigan's favor in a variety of ways. if you land Bryce, all right, that's good. You're done with quarterback in 25. If you don't land Bryce, you can kind of still keep your ducks in a row, so to speak. You don't necessarily have to scramble to, cast a wider net with other recruits. You still got a guy like Montgomery who's there and is very interested in Michigan in the same time. So I don't think this really impacts each other a whole lot. I mean, Montgomery's not dumb. He knows, and the credit to Kurt Campbell too. He's been very open to every quarterback recruit that, hey, this is, who we're recruiting, this is who we're recruiting. This is, what the landscape looks like. And, this is who we're dealing with. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think either guy impacts each other. I mean, I think it's whoever comes off the board first will help Michigan either way.
Yeah.
Ideally, you'd like Underwood to come off the board first, just so you know where you stand. But at the same time, Montgomery isn't a slouch. This isn't a guy where you're like, well, I guess I'll take this guy. No, you'd be very happy to take either guy. You're not going to get both, but you're going to get either guy at this point. I mean, I do think Michigan's best relationships are with Underwood and Montgomery, and obviously that Michigan connection, and when he's an Ohio kid, helps with vicinity too. So yeah, ultimately we'll see. I mean, him going to the barbecue again is a good thing. If Bryce ends up being there, it's a good thing. It's not going to be weird. It's just ideally from, a pecking order standpoint, you'd like to see Underwood off the board first. And as far as we know right now, it's certainly trending in that direction. So, we'll see what happens comes November. I mean, there's still plenty of time between now and I said November, between now and January. There's plenty of time between now and January and to figure things out. And yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens, but I don't think that, Ryan Montgomery is some, consolation prize if they miss out on Underwood, and the fact that they can recruit Underwood at the same time and still be in a good standing for Montgomery kind of just speaks to, the strength of Kurt Campbell's recruiting abilities and him being open and not, hiding anything from these kids too. So we'll see. We'll see.
And I think having Jaden Davis in the fold makes all of this easier too. There's a lot less desperation here, right? Yeah. I know I don't even want to get into it because we've had our conversations about Jaden Davis in the past and some of the lowering ranking things and conversations around him that have occurred this summer. We'll wait till he starts playing football in the fall, and we'll see how the conversations around Davis start to swing again. That's all I'll say for now.